The colony was loud with machines and dust. Metal claws tore into the ground, pulling up rocks glowing with strange colors. Human workers moved among alien miners, each one tired and dirty. The human man, named Daniel, had just arrived on this distant world. He was only supposed to check the mining equipment, nothing more. He walked slowly, studying the colony, when his eyes caught a figure that did not match the others. She was small compared to the strong alien workers. She wore a large gray hoodie that covered most of her face. Her hands moved quickly as she carried heavy containers of ore, but she did not look like the others. Daniel noticed she never spoke to anyone, never raised her head, and every time a guard passed, she pulled her hood lower as if trying to vanish into the shadows. At first, Daniel thought nothing of it. Maybe she was just shy, or maybe she was punished if she spoke too much. But as he kept watching, something in his chest told him there was more. Her steps were too careful, her silence too sharp, as if she was hiding something. The other workers ignored her, but the guards, their eyes lingered on her with a mix of fear and respect. That was strange. Why would guards fear a simple worker? Daniel bent down, pretending to check a broken pipe, but his eyes stayed on her. She lifted a container with more strength than her slim body should allow. For a moment, her sleeve slipped down, and Daniel caught sight of faint glowing lines on her skin. They looked like marks shining blue under the dust. She quickly pulled the sleeve back up, her head snapping around to check if anyone had seen. Daniel turned away, pretending he hadn't noticed, but his heart beat faster. Later, during the meal break, most workers sat together in groups, sharing rough alien food. The hooded girl sat alone in a corner, holding her bowl close. No one went near her. The air was filled with voices, laughter, and the clatter of tools, but her corner was silent. Daniel felt something pulling him toward her. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the way she seemed out of place. But he found his steps moving in her direction. He sat down near her, placing his tray on the ground. She froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth. Slowly, she turned her head, and Daniel saw a glimpse of her eyes beneath the hood. They were not like the others. Sharper, brighter, as if they carried storms within them. "You're new," her voice was low, almost a whisper. Daniel gave a small smile. "Yeah, just checking the machines. I saw you working earlier. You carry more than anyone else." Her head dropped and she muttered, "I do what I must." There was something final in her tone, like a wall slamming shut. Daniel tried again. "Do they treat you well here?" This time she didn't answer. Instead, she pushed her tray away, stood, and walked off into the shadows between the machines. Daniel felt a sting of frustration. Most workers here were rough but open. This girl was different. She was guarding herself like a secret. As night fell, the colony grew quiet. Daniel walked the outer fence to check the security sensors. From the corner of his eye, he saw movement. The hooded girl was slipping away from the workers' quarters, her head down, her steps quick. She moved like someone trained to vanish without being seen. Daniel crouched behind a crate, watching her disappear into the storage yard. His mind raced. Why would a simple worker sneak around at night? He followed, keeping his distance. She moved between containers stacked high, her steps silent. At one point, she stopped, pressing her hand to her sleeve again. A faint blue glow seeped out before fading. Daniel's breath caught. That glow was not natural. It was something powerful, something forbidden. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the yard. 2 guards walked past, their voices low. "If she slips again, the commander won't forgive us. She's too dangerous to let live." Daniel's stomach twisted. They weren't talking about any worker. They were talking about her. The girl froze behind a crate, her hood pulled low. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to turn back, to forget all of this, but his legs refused. He wanted answers. He wanted to know who she was and why the guards spoke of her with fear. The guards moved on, their steps fading into the distance. The girl slipped out again, moving toward an abandoned corner of the yard. Daniel followed, his boots silent on the metal ground. Finally, she stopped in front of a broken mirror leaned against a crate. Slowly, with trembling hands, she pushed back her hood. Daniel's breath caught. Her face was nothing like the dirty workers. Her skin glowed faintly under the moonlight, lined with delicate marks that looked like living fire. Her eyes shone bright, filled with both sorrow and strength. She looked regal, powerful, nothing close to the worker she pretended to be. She stared at her reflection for a long time, then pulled the hood back over her head, hiding her true self again. Daniel stood frozen in the shadows, his heart pounding. He had thought she was just another worker, someone nameless in the crowd. But now he knew. He was wrong. She was hiding from everyone, even her own people. And whatever secret she carried, it was dangerous enough to make guards whisper about her death. He turned away before she could notice him, his mind heavy with questions. Who was she? Why was she here, living like a slave? And why did his instincts tell him that this meeting was only the beginning of something far bigger than either of them could imagine? The next day, the colony was busy again. But Daniel could not take his eyes off the hooded girl. Every movement of hers looked like a performance, hiding a deeper truth. She carried heavy crates, but her body moved too smoothly, as if she was trained, not broken like other workers. Every time a guard came near, she lowered her head more than the others. But Daniel noticed the guards were not treating her like the rest. They watched her carefully, with hands ready on their weapons. It was not the look of men watching a weak worker. It was the look of men afraid of a beast that might break free. Daniel felt restless. He tried to focus on repairing a mining drill, but his mind stayed on her. That night, he could not stop himself. When the shift ended, he hid in the shadows and waited. Soon enough, he saw her slip away again, moving fast, her hood covering her face. She crossed into the far tunnels where old machines and broken crates were kept. Daniel followed quietly, each step cautious. The deeper he went, the darker the tunnels became. Only dim lights flickered on the walls. Daniel's breathing grew heavy, and for a moment he thought he lost her. But then, in a wide-open chamber filled with broken equipment, he saw her. She stood still, her hood still on, her hands trembling slightly. Daniel hid behind a fallen pipe and watched. Slowly, with hesitant fingers, she reached up and pulled her hood back. Daniel's eyes widened. For the first time, he saw her face fully. It was unlike anything he had imagined. Her skin was pale silver with glowing blue veins running along her cheeks like delicate patterns. Her eyes blazed with light, brighter than the stars outside the colony. And on her forehead, hidden before, was a faint symbol, an emblem carved by nature itself. It was not a mark of a worker. It was a royal sign. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He understood now why the guards feared her. She was not some nameless laborer. She was someone of great importance, perhaps even royalty. Suddenly, voices echoed from behind, heavy boots, harsh whispers. Daniel turned his head and saw 3 figures moving into the chamber. Assassins. Their steps were quick and silent, their eyes fixed on the glowing girl. One raised a weapon, its tip humming with deadly energy. End it fast, one of them hissed. The council doesn't want her alive. The girl spun around, panic flashing in her bright eyes. She pulled her hood back up in vain, but it was too late. They had seen her. She stepped back, her breath shaking, until her back hit a pile of metal scraps. Daniel knew he had a choice. He could stay hidden and survive, or he could step forward and face death. His fists tightened. Something inside him roared louder than his fear. He could not let them kill her. He leaped from behind the pipe, grabbing the nearest piece of broken metal. The assassins turned in surprise, not expecting a human to interfere. Daniel swung hard, knocking one weapon away. The assassin stumbled, but the other 2 lunged forward. Daniel fought with desperate strength, his heart pounding in his chest. The girl's eyes widened as she watched him. She had expected to die, not to be defended by a stranger. For a moment she hesitated, then her hand glowed with energy, sparks dancing along her fingers. But she stopped herself, as if using her power would reveal too much. Daniel ducked as a blade slashed above his head. He shoved one assassin back, then grabbed a rock and smashed it against another's helmet. Pain jolted through his arms, but he did not stop. He was not trained for this, but his body moved with raw instinct. "Run," he shouted at her. But she did not run. Instead, she picked up a broken steel rod and swung it at one of the attackers, her strength surprising even Daniel. Together, they pushed back the assassins, forcing them to retreat a few steps. The leader growled, his voice dripping with hatred. "You can't hide forever, princess. The council will never stop hunting you." Daniel's eyes snapped to her. Princess. The word echoed in his head like thunder. Everything made sense now. The strange marks, the glowing skin, the fear of the guards. She was not a worker at all. She was the heir of a powerful alien bloodline, hiding among slaves to escape death. The assassins backed away slowly, their eyes filled with cold promise. Next time, no one will save you. They disappeared into the shadows, leaving silence behind. Daniel stood panting, his chest heaving with exhaustion. His arms ached and sweat dripped down his face. He turned toward her, his mind still spinning. "You're not who you pretend to be," he said, his voice rough. Her hood had fallen again, her glowing skin and shining eyes uncovered. She looked at him with a mix of fear and sadness. "You should not have helped me. Now they will hunt you too." Daniel gave a small laugh, tired but firm. "I was already in trouble the moment I followed you. At least now I know why." She stared at him, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. For the first time, someone had chosen to stand by her side, even knowing the danger. Her people had betrayed her. The guards had only watched her with fear, but this human, a stranger, had stepped forward without hesitation. The silence between them was heavy, filled with questions and unspoken truths. Finally, she whispered, "My name is Liara." Daniel nodded slowly, the sound of her name carving itself into his memory. Liara. Not a worker, not a slave, but a hidden princess running from death. In that moment, Daniel knew his life had changed forever. He had seen her true face, her secret identity, and the danger chasing her. And deep inside, he also knew one thing clearly. He could not turn away now, no matter what. The night was no longer quiet after the attack. The echo of the assassin's words clung to the walls of the tunnels, and Liara's breathing was fast and sharp. Daniel's chest still rose and fell heavily from the fight, his hands cut from the struggle. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them felt heavier than the broken machines around them. Then a sound snapped the silence, the sharp alarm of patrol units moving closer. They were not safe here anymore. Daniel grabbed her arm firmly, but not harshly. "We need to move. Now." Liara hesitated, her eyes darting back toward the direction the assassins had vanished. She wanted answers, maybe even revenge, but her instincts told her that staying meant death. With a nod, she allowed him to lead. Together they ran through the tunnels, their boots echoing against the metal floor. The old lamps above flickered, throwing shadows that looked like hands reaching for them. As they turned a corner, Daniel pulled her behind a stack of crates just as a group of guards marched past. Their heavy boots shook the ground, their rifles glowing faintly in the dark. Liara's body pressed against Daniel's shoulder as they crouched low. His heart pounded so loudly, he feared the guards could hear it. But the soldiers marched on without noticing them. Only when their footsteps faded did Daniel whisper, "They know. They're hunting you." Liara's eyes flashed with pain and defiance. "They've hunted me for weeks. It won't stop until they succeed." Daniel frowned. "Why? You're a princess, aren't you? Why do your own people want you dead?" Her lips tightened. For a moment, she looked away as if the answer itself was too heavy to speak. But as they moved again, climbing up a broken stairway into an abandoned storage deck, she finally spoke. Her voice trembled at first, but then grew firm. "I was promised to the council leader's son. They called it a bond of unity, but it was chains disguised as marriage. I refused. I said no, because it would mean the slavery of my people and the end of my freedom. That is why they hunt me. To them, I am not a daughter of the crown anymore. I am a threat." Daniel listened, his jaw tightening. Her words reminded him of Earth's history, of kings, queens, and betrayals for power. He had seen wars fought for greed, and now he saw the same pattern among aliens who thought themselves greater. He felt anger rise inside him. Not at her, but at the thought that she was forced to hide in rags because she refused to bow to tyranny. "You were right to refuse," he said, his voice rough but certain. "No one deserves chains, no matter how shiny they look." Liara stared at him, surprised. No alien had ever spoken to her like that, not even those who had once sworn loyalty. And yet, this human, this outsider who should mean nothing to her, spoke with a fire she hadn't felt in anyone else. Their path grew harder as they reached the outer tunnels leading into the desert beyond the colony. The ground shook with the hum of machines chasing them. Somewhere behind, they heard voices shouting orders, weapons charging, search drones buzzing through the air. They had little time. The desert outside was cruel. Endless sand stretched under two moons, the air sharp and cold. The wind blew grains like knives, stinging their faces. Daniel pulled his scarf higher over his mouth, while Liara kept her hood low again. They moved quickly, leaving the colony lights behind. But the hunters did not give up. Drones zipped overhead, their red lights scanning the dunes. Daniel grabbed Liara's hand and pulled her into a dry ravine, its high walls giving them cover. They pressed against the stone, holding their breath as a drone hovered just above. The light scanned so close that Daniel could feel its warmth on his arm. He tightened his grip on Liara's hand, ready to spring if it found them. But at the last second, the drone turned and flew away. Liara exhaled slowly, her shoulders trembling. "You should not be here," she whispered. "You should leave me. If they catch you, they will kill you too." Daniel shook his head. His voice was steady despite the danger. "Too late for that. They saw me with you. My choice is already made." Her eyes searched his face, trying to understand. He was just a human, a species many aliens called weak or insignificant. Yet he looked at her with steady eyes, without fear, without regret. Something stirred in her chest, hope mixed with confusion. They pushed on, deeper into the desert, where broken ruins of ancient structures lay half buried in sand. The night grew colder, their breaths turning white in the air. Daniel led her into one of the ruins, where part of the ceiling still held, shielding them from the sky. It was dark, but safe enough to rest for a moment. Liara sank onto a stone, her body trembling from exhaustion. Daniel pulled out a small water pack from his belt and handed it to her. She hesitated, then drank, her glowing eyes watching him the whole time. "You fight like someone trained," she finally said. "But you are no soldier here. Why risk everything for me?" Daniel leaned against the wall, his body aching from the fight. He gave a tired smile. "Because when I saw you, I didn't see a princess or a worker. I saw someone alone, surrounded by enemies. I couldn't walk away from that. Not then, not now." Her lips parted, but no answer came. For years, she had been told humans were fragile, untrustworthy, unimportant. And yet this man had bled for her without hesitation. The night stretched long. Outside, the desert winds howled, carrying the sound of distant engines still searching. But inside the ruin, for the first time in weeks, Liara felt a small spark of safety. She did not say it aloud, but in her heart, she realized something dangerous and powerful. She trusted him. As she closed her eyes for a short rest, Daniel kept watch, his hand tight on a broken piece of metal he carried like a weapon. He did not know what tomorrow would bring. He only knew that the moment he stepped out of the shadows to defend her, his fate had become tied to hers. Whatever storm was coming, they would face it together. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, nothing but rolling dunes glowing silver under the light of two moons. The silence was broken only by the whistling wind and the crunch of footsteps. Daniel walked in front, his eyes scanning for danger, while Liara followed close behind. Both were tired, their clothes heavy with dust, but stopping meant death. The hunters would not give up so easily. The sandstorm came without warning. One moment the night was clear, the next a wall of dust and wind rushed across the desert like an angry beast. Daniel shouted for Liara to stay close. The storm howled, blinding them. Sand whipped at their faces, cutting like sharp blades. The air grew thick, hard to breathe. Daniel wrapped his scarf tighter and reached for Liara's hand, pulling her along. Her grip was firm, but he could feel the tremble of fear in her fingers. The storm swallowed everything, the colony lights, the stars, even the moons above. They moved blindly, stumbling over dunes, the ground shifting beneath them. Several times Liara fell, but Daniel pulled her back to her feet. His body ached, but he did not let go. The storm, brutal as it was, gave them cover. No drone could see through this chaos. No soldiers could track their footprints in the shifting sand. Hours passed before the winds slowed. The air cleared little by little, revealing a desert transformed. The dunes had shifted, erasing every sign of where they had come from. Daniel dropped to his knees, coughing, his throat dry and raw. Liara collapsed beside him, her hood torn, her glowing marks faint beneath the dust. For a long moment they just sat in silence, their chests heaving. Finally Daniel looked at her. "You all right?" She nodded slowly, though her face was pale. "I have endured worse, but without you I would not have survived that storm." Daniel smiled faintly, despite his exhaustion. "Storm or assassins, doesn't matter. I'm not letting them take you." They rested for only a short while before moving again. Liara led them now, her glowing eyes sharper in the moonlight. She pointed toward a cluster of rocks far in the distance. There is a place to hide there. Old ruins from before my people came here. Few know about it. The trek was long, but finally they reached the rocks. Hidden between them was the mouth of a cave, dark and cold. Inside, the air was cooler, the stone walls whispering with echoes. Daniel lit a small fire with scraps he carried, its orange glow flickering against the walls. The warmth eased the chill, but it also revealed the exhaustion etched deep in their faces. For a while, neither spoke. The fire crackled softly, the shadows dancing. Then Lyara broke the silence. You risk too much for me, human. Do you even understand what you have walked into? Daniel looked at her across the fire. I understand enough. They want you dead. And you're not just some runaway worker. You're someone who matters. Her eyes narrowed, reflecting the flames. You don't fear me? You saw what I am. You know what my blood means. My people would kill to keep me silent. Daniel leaned back, his voice steady. Fear you? No. You're flesh and blood like me. You bleed, you feel, you fight. What I fear is leaving you alone to face all of this. That's not who I am. For a moment, her expression softened, and she lowered her gaze. No one had ever spoken to her like this. To most, she was either a symbol of power or a target for death. But this human looked at her as a person, nothing more, nothing less. Suddenly, a faint hum echoed outside the cave. Both froze. Daniel doused the fire quickly, plunging them into darkness. He gestured for silence. Lyara held her breath, her glowing eyes dimming as she pressed against the wall. Outside, the sound of engines grew louder, hovercrafts scanning the desert. Voices shouted commands. Lights swept across the dunes. Daniel whispered, They're close. Stay behind me. The searchlights passed dangerously near the cave mouth. Daniel's grip tightened around a jagged rock he had picked up as a weapon. His muscles tensed, ready to fight, even if it meant his death. But the lights moved on, and the engines slowly faded into the night. Relief washed over them, but it was thin and fragile. The chase was only growing fiercer. Their enemies were not giving up. They were tightening the net. When silence returned, Lyara finally spoke, her voice trembling. You should leave me. If they capture me, it is my burden. Why should you carry it too? Daniel turned toward her, his face lit faintly by the dying glow of embers. Because the moment I stepped out to save you, I chose this path. Don't ask me to walk away now. That's not how humans are built. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. She only stared at him, her heart pounding. Something strange stirred inside her, something she had long buried, trust. The night passed with little rest. Daniel sat awake most of the time, listening for footsteps, his back against the cold stone wall. Lyara lay nearby, her breathing soft, her hood pulled over her glowing marks once again. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, hiding both danger and hope. When dawn finally came, the light poured into the cave mouth, golden and sharp. Daniel stood, stretching his stiff muscles, and looked out at the desert with narrowed eyes. The journey was far from over. He knew the storm had only bought them time. Their hunters would return, stronger and more determined. Lyara joined him at the entrance, her face calm but her eyes carrying storms within. You still have a chance to go back, she said quietly. Daniel shook his head, his voice steady. No, the only way is forward. And with those words, they stepped out of the cave, side by side, into the vast desert. The chase had only just begun, but together they walked into the unknown, ready to face whatever waited for them beyond the dunes. The cave gave them shelter for only a short time, but the desert was merciless. When night returned, the air grew colder, sharp enough to freeze through their clothes. Daniel searched the cave for anything useful and found a small hollow at the back, deep enough to block the wind. He set a tiny fire with scraps he had carried in his pack. The flames flickered weakly, but even that small warmth felt like a treasure. Lyara sat across from him, her hood lowered now, her glowing marks faint in the firelight. For the first time, she did not rush to cover them. Her eyes, bright and filled with something unspoken, stayed fixed on Daniel. Silence stretched between them until she finally broke it. You should not have stayed with me, she whispered. Every step you take with me makes your death more certain. Daniel leaned forward, his hands near the fire. His voice was calm but firm. I've faced death before. This isn't about fear. It's about choice. I chose to stand with you. Her lips pressed together, and for a moment she looked away. The flames reflected on her silver skin, making her look like a figure carved from starlight. She had been trained her whole life to hold power, to lead, but now she felt smaller, more vulnerable. Yet this human's words struck deeper than any oath she had ever heard. Slowly, she began to speak. Her voice trembled at first, but then grew steady. I was raised in a palace where everyone bowed to me, but their eyes never saw me as a person, only as a symbol. When my father died, the council demanded I marry the heir of the most powerful house. It was not a marriage, it was a chain, a bond that would give them control of everything. When I refused, they called me traitor. They said my blood no longer belonged to me, and they sent blades in the dark to silence me forever. Her hand trembled slightly as she touched her sleeve, where the glowing lines on her arm pulsed faintly. This power in me, it is the mark of my line. To my people, it means I must obey their command, or I must die. There is no middle path. Daniel listened quietly, his eyes steady on her. His chest ached at her words. He could imagine her standing alone in that palace, everyone demanding she surrender her freedom, everyone calling her duty a chain. It reminded him of battles he had fought back on Earth, not against kings, but against systems that treated people like tools. He understood her pain more than she realized. "You're stronger than them," he said softly. "Not because of the marks on your skin, but because you said no. That takes courage. More courage than any of those cowards hunting you." Liara's eyes met his, shining like moons. No one had ever said those words to her before. To everyone else, her refusal was rebellion, shame, or betrayal. To him, it was bravery. For the first time in weeks, she felt her chest lighten, as if the weight pressing down had shifted just a little. They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. Then Daniel pulled a piece of dried food from his pack and handed it to her. "Here. Not much, but it'll keep you standing." She accepted it, their fingers brushing for a brief moment. A warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the fire. She looked at him again, searching his face for some flaw, some hidden reason. But all she saw was a man exhausted yet unbroken, determined yet gentle. "You risk everything without asking for anything in return," she murmured. "Why?" Daniel gave a tired smile. "Because I know what it's like to be cornered. I know what it's like to have the world tell you that you don't matter. And I know how much it means when even one person stands beside you. Right now, that's what I can give you. So I will." Her chest tightened. She had expected betrayal from everyone, even from him at first, but now she realized he spoke with the honesty of someone who had nothing to gain, yet everything to lose. And still, he stayed. But the peace did not last. A sudden noise outside made Daniel freeze. The low hum of engines, the crunch of boots on sand, the firelight flickered against the cave walls as shadows passed near the entrance. Voices carried through the wind, harsh and commanding. Soldiers. They had found the ruins. Daniel quickly put out the fire, plunging the cave into darkness. His hand closed around a sharp stone he had kept ready as a weapon. He motioned for Liara to stay quiet, his body pressed close to the wall. The voices grew louder. One soldier barked orders. "Search every corner. The princess cannot escape again." Liara's breath caught, her glowing eyes dimming as she fought to control her fear. Daniel could feel her tension even in the dark. He placed his hand lightly on hers, steadying her, silently telling her she was not alone. The sound of boots echoed deeper into the cave. Shadows grew larger against the walls as soldiers advanced. Daniel's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He tightened his grip on the stone, ready to strike, ready to fight no matter the odds. Liara's hand suddenly glowed faintly with energy, her power begging to be unleashed. But she hesitated, afraid of what would happen if she revealed herself too fully. The council would know exactly where she was. The soldiers' footsteps came closer, their voices sharper. "Check there. Don't leave a stone unturned." Daniel whispered just loud enough for her to hear. "If it comes to it, we fight, together." She turned her head, her glowing eyes meeting his even in the dark. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she felt something other than fear. She felt trust. She nodded once, her hand steadying in his. The cave trembled with the sound of boots and weapons as the soldiers drew closer. The fire was gone, the air was cold, and their hearts pounded with the weight of choice. They were no longer strangers hiding from the world. They were two souls bound by danger, ready to face death side by side. And whatever happened next, Liara knew she was no longer alone. The footsteps grew louder, echoing off the stone walls as the soldiers spread deeper into the cave. Their flashlights cut sharp beams across the darkness, searching for the faintest sign of life. Daniel's muscles tightened as he pressed himself against the cold wall, holding his crude stone weapon. His breathing was slow, controlled, but inside his chest his heart hammered like a drum. Liara crouched close beside him, her glowing eyes dimmed almost to nothing, her hands trembling as she fought to keep her power hidden. The first soldier appeared, his shadow stretching tall against the cave wall. He stepped carefully, his rifle ready, his light sweeping the ground. Daniel's grip tightened. Another soldier came behind him, then another. Soon 3 of them stood in the narrow tunnel, their weapons raised, scanning every dark corner. "Spread out," one hissed. "She's here. I can feel it." Liara closed her eyes, her lips trembling with a silent prayer. She could not run anymore. The cave had only one entrance. They were trapped. Daniel leaned close and whispered so softly only she could hear, "On my signal, don't hold back." Before she could answer, the soldier's light swept across them. For an instant, Daniel's face was exposed. A shout tore through the cave. "There, the human has her!" Daniel moved first. With a roar, he charged forward, swinging the stone like a club. It smashed into the nearest soldier's face, knocking him to the ground. The second raised his rifle, but Daniel slammed his shoulder into him, driving him hard against the wall. The third soldier opened fire, energy bolts flashing through the cave, sizzling against stone. Liara's fear turned into fire. Her hands glowed, the marks on her skin blazing with blue light. With a cry, she unleashed a wave of force that knocked the third soldier off his feet, sending his weapon skittering across the floor. Daniel grabbed the fallen rifle and fired blindly down the tunnel, keeping the other soldiers back. The recoil shocked his arms, but he did not stop. "Go, Liara, now!" But she did not run. She stepped forward, her body glowing brighter with every breath. Her power filled the cave, sparks dancing across the walls. Her eyes blazed like twin suns, no longer hiding what she was. The soldiers froze, fear in their eyes as they realized the truth. She was not a weak fugitive. She was the lost princess, alive and more dangerous than ever. The leader pushed forward, his armor heavier than the others. His voice boomed in the cave. "You cannot escape, Liara. The council has decreed your death. Even if you kill us, more will come. Surrender now." Her lips curled into a sharp smile, her voice steady as thunder. "I do not surrender. Not to you. Not to anyone." With a motion of her hands, she sent a wave of energy crashing into him. The force lifted him from his feet and hurled him back against the stone wall. The cave shook, dust raining from the ceiling. The other soldiers staggered, their weapons trembling in their hands. Daniel stepped beside her, the stolen rifle gripped tight. His eyes burned with the same defiance. "You heard her. She's not alone anymore." The soldiers hesitated. They had expected a frightened girl and a weak human. Instead, they faced a storm, a union of raw power and human determination. The leader rose again, his armor cracked, blood dripping from his mouth. His voice was filled with rage. "This changes nothing. The council will never allow you to live. You carry a curse. You will doom everyone who stands with you, even him." He pointed at Daniel. Liara's chest tightened. For a heartbeat, she faltered, doubt flickering in her eyes. She had always feared her bond would bring destruction to anyone who stood at her side. But Daniel's hand brushed against hers, grounding her. His voice cut through her fear. "Don't listen to him. You decide your fate, not them." Her doubt turned to fire again. She raised both hands, her body blazing with light, and unleashed her full power. A shockwave burst through the cave, sending the remaining soldiers sprawling like leaves in a storm. Their weapons clattered uselessly to the ground. The leader tried to stand again, but Daniel stepped forward, swinging the rifle stock hard against his helmet, knocking him unconscious. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of fading sparks. The cave smelled of dust, smoke, and burned air. Daniel dropped the rifle, his arms shaking from exhaustion. He turned to Liara, whose glow was slowly fading as her power calmed. Her face was pale, her body trembling from the energy she had unleashed. "You all right?" he asked, his voice rough. She nodded weakly. "Yes, but it will not end here. They will keep coming." Daniel gave a tired smile. "Then let them come. We'll be ready." For the first time since she had fled her people, Lyara felt something stronger than fear. She felt the strength of standing beside someone who did not see her as a burden or a symbol, but as a person worth fighting for. The human had bled, fought, and nearly died for her, yet he did not step back. She sank to the ground, exhaustion overtaking her. Daniel sat beside her, leaning against the stone wall. For a while, they said nothing. The silence between them was no longer empty, but filled with unspoken understanding. Finally, Lyara spoke softly, her voice almost a whisper. I thought my fight was mine alone. But now I see I was wrong. You stood beside me when no one else would. You risked everything, even your life. Why? Daniel's eyes closed for a moment, his body aching. When he opened them, his gaze met hers, steady and sure. Because it's the right thing to do. Because no one deserves to face the dark alone. And because maybe I believe in you more than you believe in yourself. Her heart tightened at his words, a warmth spreading through her chest that pushed away the cold of the cave. She looked at him, this human who should have been nothing to her, and yet had become everything. Outside, the desert wind howled, carrying the promise of more battles to come. But inside the cave, in that fragile moment of peace, Lyara felt something she had not known in a long time. Hope. The cave still carried the smell of burned air and broken weapons when dawn touched the desert outside. Daniel and Lyara sat together in silence, their bodies weak but their spirits still unbroken. The battle had ended, but both knew the war was only beginning. Lyara's glowing marks had faded into faint lines, hidden again beneath her skin, but her eyes carried a new fire. She was tired of hiding. She was tired of being hunted like an animal. Daniel rose slowly, stretching his sore arms. He looked at her with steady eyes. They'll send more after us, stronger ones. If you keep running, they'll never stop. Lyara lifted her head, her voice calm yet heavy with meaning. I cannot run anymore. I must face them. I must claim what is mine, or they will destroy me and everyone who dares stand with me. Her words struck the walls of the cave like a vow. Daniel nodded. He had known this moment would come. She was not meant to spend her life in shadows. She was born to stand in the open, even if the open sky brought danger with it. They left the cave together, stepping into the rising sun. The desert shimmered with light, endless dunes stretching as far as they could see. It felt like the world itself was waiting, holding its breath for what was to come. By midday, they reached a small outpost. Ruins stood where an old temple once stood, its broken pillars carved with strange symbols. Lyara walked slowly through the ruins, her hand brushing over the stone. Her voice was quiet, almost reverent. This place belonged to my ancestors. They stood here when they first claimed this land. If I stand here now, I am no longer a runaway. I am their heir. Daniel looked around, scanning the horizon. Dust clouds rose in the distance. He could already hear the faint rumble of engines. The enemy was coming. They had tracked her here. He turned back to her. Then stand here. Don't hide. Let them see who you are. Lyara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, her hood fell from her head, her marks glowing brighter than ever before. She no longer hid the light of her blood. She stepped onto the broken altar and faced the horizon, her figure sharp against the blazing sky. Soon the hunters arrived. Dozens of soldiers in dark armor poured from their crafts, weapons raised. Their leader stepped forward, scarred and merciless. His voice rang across the ruins. Lyara of the royal bloodline, by order of the council, you are stripped of your title. Your life is forfeit. Any who stand with you will share your fate. Daniel walked up the altar steps and stood beside her. His clothes were torn, his arms still cut from the last fight, but his eyes burned with the same fire as hers. He faced the army and shouted, his voice strong despite the odds. If you want her, you'll have to go through me. A murmur rippled through the soldiers. Shock, confusion, even fear. A human had dared to stand beside her. A species many called weak was now the shield of a princess. Lyara's heart pounded. She had expected him to walk away when things grew worse, but instead, he stood taller. She felt her chest tighten with pride and something deeper, something she did not dare name yet. The leader sneered, "One human against an army? Foolish." Daniel smirked. Not foolish, human. The battle erupted. Soldiers rushed forward, their weapons blazing. Daniel fought like a man possessed. Using every scrap of strength and cunning, he moved fast, ducking behind ruins, striking hard with stolen blades, throwing rocks and fire where guns failed. His body bled, his breath grew ragged, but he never fell. Beside him, Liara unleashed her true power. Blue fire lit the ruins as she raised her hands, her energy surging like a storm. Waves of force knocked soldiers back, their armor cracking under her wrath. Her voice rang out like thunder as she shouted, "I am Liara, daughter of the crown, and I will not bow." The soldiers hesitated, fear growing in their eyes. They had come to kill a fugitive, but now they faced a queen in spirit, if not yet in title. Her power was undeniable, her strength undeniable, and the human at her side fought with a will they could not break. The leader pushed forward, swinging a massive energy blade. Daniel blocked with all his strength, his arms shaking. The blade burned against his weapon, sparks flying. Just as the leader pressed harder, Liara struck, sending a surge of power through the ground. The earth cracked beneath their feet, throwing the leader off balance. Daniel seized the moment, driving his weapon into the leader's chest, knocking him to the ground. The soldiers froze as their commander fell. Silence spread across the battlefield. None dared step forward. They stared at the glowing princess and the human who had fought like a storm beside her. Liara stood tall on the altar, her marks blazing, her eyes unyielding. Her voice carried over the silent army. "I am no longer your prisoner. I am no longer your target. I am your rightful heir. And this human has stood by me when none of you dared. From this day forward, his courage is my courage. His fight is my fight. If you raise a weapon against him, you raise it against me." The soldiers looked at one another, their hands trembling on their rifles. Slowly, one by one, they lowered their weapons. The desert wind carried their submission as silence stretched. Daniel stood beside her, his body weak but his spirit unshaken. He looked at her and saw not just a fugitive, not just a glowing girl, but someone who had embraced who she truly was. And she, in turn, looked at him and saw not just a fragile human, but the reason she had survived long enough to take this stand. As the sun set, painting the sky in fire, Liara placed her hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You were never meant to be part of this, yet now you are the reason I am alive, the reason I can stand as who I am." Daniel gave a small, tired smile. "And I'll keep standing with you, no matter what comes next." In that moment, the desert no longer felt endless. The ruins no longer felt empty. The princess was no longer alone. Together, human and alien stood as one, ready to face the storms of the galaxy, bound not by fear, but by choice.